1 Corinthians 13, 1 through 13, from the Common English Bible. Paul writes, "If I speak in tongues of human beings and of angels, but I don't have love, I'm a clanging gong or a clashing cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and I know all the mysteries and everything else, and if I have such complete faith that I can move mountains, but I don't have love, I'm nothing. If I give away everything that I have, and hand over my own body to feel good about what I've done, but I don't have love, I receive no benefit whatsoever." Love is patient. Love is kind. It isn't jealous. It doesn't brag. It isn't arrogant. It isn't rude. It doesn't seek its own advantage. It isn't irritable. It doesn't keep a record of complaints. It isn't happy with injustice, but it is happy with the truth. Love puts up with all things, trusts in all things, hopes for all things, endures all things. Love never fails. As for prophecies, they will be brought to an end. As for tongues, they will stop. As for knowledge, it will be brought to an end. We know in part and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, what is partial will be brought to an end. When I was a child, I used to speak like a child, reason like a child, think like a child. But now that I have become a man, I put an end to childish things. Now we see a reflection in a mirror. Then we will see face to face. Now I know partially, but then I will know completely, in the same way that I have been completely known. Now, faith, hope, and love remain. These three. And the greatest of these is love. This is the word of God for us, the people of God. When I was in third grade at Mount Hope Elementary School, my teacher used to have what she called math races. She would, during lunch or sometime when we were out of the room, maybe for music or some other thing going on, she would fill the blackboard up with math problems. And then we'd all, and cover them, pull down maps and screens. She'd cover them all up. And then when we came back in, she'd have us all get in our seats, get out a piece of paper, and we knew we were going to have a math race. It was time. And we'd race to see who would be the first one done with all the math problems. Now, I have to admit, I was really good at math in third grade, okay? And I won a lot of these math races. I mean, there was me and there was a girl. I'm not going to name her because I don't know, she may be watching for all I know. But we went head-to-head a lot, and I would beat her every time, almost. And that went on for quite a while through third grade. And then all of a sudden, we got this new student in class. And that rearranged everything because they came in the alphabet before me. And I was in one of the front row seats, and all of a sudden, I found myself in the back of the classroom. And the very next time we had a math race, I came in 5th or 6th place. And the time after that, I did even worse. And my teacher began to wonder what was going on. And she talked to me. She says, Scott, are you getting this? What's happening? And I said, I don't know. It's like I can't do it all of a sudden. And so she had me stand up one day, 3-4 weeks into this crash of my math race career, and try to read the blackboard for her. And what I did was something like this, okay? And she says, stop right there, go to the nurse's office. You need glasses. What? Oh, it was terrible. So I went to the nurse's nurse's office, and within a few days, after going to Dr. Kaminsky's office in Oak Hill, I had the ugliest pair of black horned rim glasses any third grader with tooth problems has ever had, okay? It was horrendous. But I took over my seat again as math champion. Even from the back of the room, I could see that board. I could see. And I have to admit, to this day, I recall what it was like coming out of the optometrist's office with my first pair of glasses. I mean, those who have had bad eyesight and have it corrected with lenses, most people remember what it's like. I didn't know even at that age, that trees could be so clear that you could see leaves on them from a distance. I didn't know that you could read road signs from the back seat of the car. I thought there was some mystery about sitting up front that allowed you to read and know where you were. I didn't know so many things that I was missing, like birds flying through the air, because everything was out of focus. It was all out of focus. As Paul continues his talk to the church that grew up in Corinth, he talked to them about a lot of things, including using the gifts that they had, using the gifts that God had given them, using their whole lives for the service of God. And eventually, at the end of the last chapter that we read last week, chapter 12, Paul said to them, but strive for the greater gifts. That striving bothers some folks because it seems like Paul was setting up some sort of competition between having the gift of apostleship or the gift of miracles or the gift of speaking in tongue or the gift of discernment. But that's not it at all if you continue to read Paul's letter as a full continuous unit. Because we learn, as we just heard, that nothing could be further from the truth. What Paul was trying to do was to get the church there in Corinth to look at everything, spiritual gifts, their relationships with one another, the way that they looked at non-believers, and the very way that they shared together, whether it was in worship or at meals, to look at all of that in a whole new way. Paul wanted to give them a new focus for their life together as Christians. In this chapter that we just read from Paul's letter, he shows us both the greatest gift and the very lenses that we need to see our brothers and sisters, as well as the rest of God's creation, in the way that God sees it. Faith, hope, and love abide. But the greatest of these is love. Love is the lens through which Christians should be viewing everything. Everything. From the people around them to people they will never even have the opportunity to meet. From the news that they read about the world they live in to the very pages of the Bible we hold so dear. Everything is seen through the lens of love. If we don't have on the lens of love, then everything is out of focus. Everything. You know, in this church, we have this incredible program of feeding hungry children. Many of you are participants in that. Many of you help in some way or another. I have to wonder what it is that fuels that effort on our part. Is it guilt? Is it people feeling guilty about children possibly being hungry? Is it, just this wonderful desire that all people have to want to help, especially those who are weak and hurting? Or is it because we have so much money that we don't know what to do with it all? So we give a little bit of it to help feed some kids who might be hungry. Is that it? Because if you have that much money that you don't know what to do with it, we need to have a conversation sometime, okay? If that's the problem, or if that's what's motivating us. No, I believe what motivates that and what has kept it going, kept it growing, made it be the ministry that it is because the people who are involved have lived the story. They've lived the story. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. And whoever believes in him shall have life eternal. For God did not send his Son into the world to judge the world, but that the world might be saved through him. Feeding hungry children works because there are those who have lived that story. They've taken that story and made it a part of who they are. It was love that sent Jesus. And when we're looking at this world through the lens of that kind of love, the kind of love that sent Jesus, the kind of love that allowed Jesus to give of himself, wow, can there be hungry children? Can there? In our community? If we have that love. This passage that we read from 1 Corinthians is one that I would say is just pregnant with possibilities about what love is. Love is patient. Love is kind. It isn't jealous. It doesn't brag. It isn't arrogant. It isn't rude. It doesn't seek its own advantage. It isn't irritable. It doesn't keep record of complaints. It isn't happy with injustice, but it's happy with the truth. Love puts up with all things, trusts in all things, hope for all things, endures all things. Now I know I'm guilty, as many other pastors are, of watering down these words by, saving them for weddings, all right? Thinking that this has something to do with the romantic love between couples, between husband and wife. But that's not what these words are about. These words are about the very lenses we are given to look at the whole entire world around us. Faith, hope, and love remain, but the greatest of these is what? Faith, hope, and love remain, but the greatest of these is what? Love. With that in mind, I wonder how we would see the drug user on Mercer Street, the prostitute walking down Thorn Avenue, or the person in the pew that made that mean comment to us, a few weeks ago. The homeless people who walk through our own town looking for shelter in the midst of cold. Refugees from Syria. refugees from anywhere. How do they look through the lens of God's love? My brothers and sisters, you are to strive for the greatest gifts. Faith, hope, and love. But the greatest, because it will change the way you see everything. And I do mean everything, even yourself. The greatest of these is love. Yeah, I know, some may be squinting to try and make out the words of the Bible. Some may be working really hard to see their brothers and sisters in the church. Some may be tilting their heads to try and bring into focus folks who are outside the church. Well, today, you have another opportunity to come to the eternal vision fixer. Take a piece of the body. Receive a bit of the fruit of the vine, and remember the love that Christ has for you. Enough to give himself up for you. And even as you take that into yourself, perhaps, you could allow the Holy Spirit to adjust your lenses as well. Faith, hope, and love remain. But the greatest of these